What's happening in Barbados as well. Today, we take a look at the sale of lands and historical landmarks in Barbados. It seems to be a very contentious issue building in Barbados and on the lands and the sale of state lands and historical landmarks. Now, any country where you have the sale of lands, especially in these little islands, is always going to be an issue. In recent years, Barbados has witnessed what I would say an alarming trend where state owned lands and historical landmarks are being sold or transferred to private developers, often resulting in significant public outcry. This practice has raised serious questions about the implications of prioritizing economic development over cultural heritage, as well as the potential impact on local communities. This is heavy stuff, but I want you to stick around. This is not the usual video, and so I want you to stick around because it's an important issue. And let's look at the context of the land sales in Barbados, the economic pressures that are taking place. And Barbados, like many Caribbean nations, has been grappling with economic pressures, and they have been exacerbated by natural disasters, including the COVID-19 pandemic and the subsequent downturn in tourism because of these things. And there has been a need for economic recovery, and has led the government of Barbados to seek new avenues for revenue generation. They have come up with the sale of state lands, seen as a viable solution. Now, the question is, are there enough to sell and leave for future generations? The rationale is that privatization and development can attract foreign investment, create jobs, and stimulate growth. That is what the government has been saying. And so, in early 2025, the Barbadian government announced a series of land sales, including the controversial decision to transfer the historic Old Town Civic Center to a private tourism operator. This was part of a broader initiative that included the divestment of other state-owned coastal properties, such as those in Oystens, in favor of tourism development. Now, the government argues that these moves are essential for revitalizing the tourism sector and boosting the economy. Now, there is always a different side to this. And I want to take a look or a closer look at the Old Town Civic Center. I don't know how many of you have gone to Barbados and been there. It's a beautiful place. I've been there myself. A lot of historical significance. And so the Old Town Civic Center, located on the west coast of Barbados, I would say holds significant and historical cultural value for that island. It's not only a landmark where important civic events have taken place, but also a site that reflects the island's colonial and I would put it post-colonial history. And so the decision to repurpose this space for high-rise hotel has drawn criticism from various stakeholders, including the Barbados National Trust, which is responsible for safeguarding the nation's heritage. And so the public outcry has been heavy in Barbados, and I could understand why. I have been there. And so the response from the public, it has been what I would say vehement. And citizens have organized protests, and I understand one is taking place this weekend as well, and voice their concerns through various platforms. Like I said, I've been reading articles, looking at vlogs and different stuff. And they're arguing that the sale of such a significant site undermines the cultural identity of Barbados. And the critics are contending that the government is prioritizing what you call short-term economic gains over the preservation of its historical legacy. And so the backlash has prompted calls for greater transparency and accountability in government in its decision-making processes. That's what I glean from the articles, the editorials, the vlogs that I've watched. Now, there's a broader implication of land sales anywhere you go in the Caribbean because we have limited space. But in this context, we're looking at the cultural heritage versus the economic development. And so the ongoing debate actually around the sale of state lands and historical landmarks in Barbados highlights what I would say is a fundamental tension between cultural heritage and economic development. And while proponents of the land sales argue that these measures are necessary for economic recovery, Opponents contend that sacrificing historical sites for commercial gain is a form of cultural erasing. You understand what I'm saying here? It's like we don't know our identity anymore. But there are arguments for the economic development. Remember, I said to stick with me, subscribe, because it's not the average video. There's the one of job creation and foreign investment. They're advocating that the privatization can lead to job creation in the tourism sector, which is vital for the island's economy. Barbados is heavily reliant on tourism. Then you're talking about attracting foreign developers, which can bring much needed capital into the country, providing a boost to local businesses and infrastructure. And then you will have modernization of tourism. The development of the new tourism facilities is seen as a way to modernize the industry and to improve the overall visitor experience. And those are arguments coming out from proponents of the sale of the lands. There are counter arguments for the cultural preservations. And based on what I've read, we are talking about cultural identity, where persons are arguing that the sale of the historical landmarks threaten the cultural identity of Barbados, as these sites are integral to the island's history and heritage. And if you ever been to Old Town, you would recognize that community is really close-knitted. And so you're looking at community displacement. This is what I understand. The privatization of public spaces can lead to displacement of local communities. And there's always the loss of access to sites that hold communal significance. And like I said, if you've ever been to Old Town, you recognize that that space itself holds a lot of communal significance. Selling public assets for short-term gain raises concerns about the long-term sustainability of the economy and the potential loss of valuable resources for future generations, because you're talking about the history of the island, the historical context. And so there's something I noticed people are not talking about, which is the role of the innovation of land sales in terms of digital innovations. Interestingly, I found that Barbadian government is exploring what you call e-conveyancing, quick, easy to modernize land transactions. So, if there are people who intend to protest, make a counter argument, you don't have much time, because e-conveyance is like bam, 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 it's done. It's faster than shifting around papers like we do in this Caribbean. Now, the initiative is basically for streamlining the process of property transfers. It's going to be efficient for buyers and sellers, but it does not address fundamental concerns surrounding the sale of state lands and historical sites. Do you just use the same method, or do you go through the long process where we can vet, where we can say, if people want to oppose, we can have a time for that to be done? Because, with e-business, it's here and now. It doesn't take a while. You understand? And so there are also a perspective from the stakeholders, like government officials. And I've read where I think it was the Minister of Housing and Lands defended the decision to sell state lands by emphasizing the potential again for foreign investment, which the country needs, the minister says, to deal with its economic recovery. And the minister also argued that the deals struck with private developers are carefully considered, and that the government remains committed to balancing cultural development with cultural preservation. And this is just paraphrasing him. And if I'm wrong, you can leave your comments in the section below. And I hope I'm not wrong on that, because this is a minister of government I'm paraphrasing. But then I noticed that the community activists have been saying, and heritage advocates have been vocal in their opposition to land sales. And they have emphasized that there is a need for public consultation and community input in decisions that affect historical sites. And I understand why they're saying that. They're arguing that the government should prioritize cultural assets over yielding to the pressures of economic development. So there's a balance that needs to be struck here, and I hope that that is done. And when it comes to these things, there's also the academics and the historians. Where are they playing their part? Guys, remember to like, share, and subscribe. And this is not the average video, okay? Academics and historians have been weighing in on the issue, and I've been reading a lot of papers. And what they're doing is highlighting the importance of historical landmarks in understanding the Barbadian identity, because this is where you get to know the background. A child grows up and they want to know, Mom, Dad, what's our identity? And these sites play a large role in that. And they are arguing that these sites serve as what they would call tangible links to the past. So they provide context for contemporary social and political issues. And they're saying that the loss of these landmarks could have detrimental effects on the collective memory of the nation. So that is very, very vital and important. And so I want to say that the sale of state lands, whether it be in Barbados and historical landmarks in Trinidad, Grenada, St. Vincent, wherever it is, will always be a multifaceted issue with far reaching implications. And so while government will want to seek to stimulate economic growth through foreign investment and privatization, the public response from Barbados, what it has underscored is the importance of cultural heritage and the need for what I would say thoughtful governance. So, as Barbados navigates this path forward, what they will have to do is to strike a delicate balance between fostering economic recovery and preserving unique cultural identity that defines the island. And so the ongoing discourse surrounding these land sales, I believe, serves as a reminder of the complexities in managing public assets. Yes, that's right. And the need for what I would say inclusive decision making that respects the voices of all stakeholders. If you don't do that, you're going to have what you're going to have tomorrow, massive protest plan. And so I want to say, as Barbadians, I believe, continue to grapple with this contentious issue, I believe it is crucial for citizens to engage actively in discussions about the future of their heritage. Nothing is wrong with that, but they must advocate for transparent governance, public consultation, and preservation of the landmarks. That should remain at the forefront of the national dialogue and also at the forefront of the protest, because the legacy of Barbados is intertwined with its historical sites, and safeguarding these treasures is essential for what I would say the cultural and economic well-being of future generations in Barbados. Guys, I think this is a vexing issue, but it's also one where we have to strike balance. And your comments will be valuable to this discourse. And I believe once you comment and you put your position there, I'll be able to come again because I believe in us having a conversation as a community. And I believe others who want to talk on this topic should not just regurgitate what I am saying, but actually add value to it as well. That's important going forward. So, guys, thanks for listening and have a great day. Remember to like, share, and subscribe and leave your comments in the section below.